Okay, so for a while now, I've been talking about doing Three.js tutorials, and I have finally done it. So today we're going to be building this 3D mockup generator. We're going to get a mug, we're going to upload images to it, we're going to change the color, and then we're going to download the final image. Great, and we're going to do this once we are logged in. So we're going to have a super professional login system. So we're going to be able to sign up, sign in, and when we are signed in, we see our dashboard with all our user information. And what is cool about this is that we can also create organizations to which we can add users. So here you will see I have made an organization, and you can see the member count, and you can also see the pending invites. This is so awesome. I will really level up your game when making professional authenticated apps and systems. Okay, so I don't know what's more exciting, the 3D model or the authentication, all of it together, essentially make an awesome app. So I'm excited. Once again, what we're going to do is create an authentication system. So we're going to be able to create users, sign up, sign in, then have a dashboard display all of our user credentials, as well as the organization that we are associated with. If we are, we're going to add users to that organization too. And finally, tackle the 3D mug in Three.js. So a lot to cover, let's do it. Make sure to click on the link in the video description so everyone starts off at the same place. And let's go. Okay, so let's do it. First off, I am going to sign up to Clerk, which is going to give us all the UI components and essentially all the code that we're going to need for the authentication part of this tutorial. So this is free. I'm not going to use a credit card or anything like that. I am just going to sign in. So please go ahead and do the same. I'm going to choose to sign in with Google. Now, I'm just going to create a new application. So I'm just going to call this, let's call this starter. And we can essentially choose how we want to sign in. So we're creating the sign in module here. We can sign in by email address. So I already have that. You can, of course, get rid of it if you don't want that. You can do phone number, username, whatever you want. I'm just going to keep it like this. Okay, you can choose to sign in with GitHub, but I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to keep it simple for now. So email and Google are the options that I've chosen to sign in with. Okay, so this is a preview of that component, and let's create application. Great. Now we're going to be building a React app this time. The next time we do this, it could be a TypeScript app, but I think React is a good place to start. The next time we build this, it could be a Next.js app, so keep your eyes peeled. But React is a good place to start. So I'm simply going to click React, and we can get essentially all the steps we need in order to get our app up and running. So just get the bare bones of it. So let's set up a React app using Vite. So I'm simply going to copy the commands here and get up my terminal. So here's my terminal. I'm going to go to a directory of my choice where I like to keep all my projects, and I'm just going to paste that. Okay, now I don't think we're going to make it a TypeScript project for now. I'm just going to keep it super basic. So let's just delete that. There we go. And what should we call this? I think let's call it 3D mock app. Okay, so I'm going to create a project, a React project called 3D mock app in WebStorm projects, and then I'm going to go into it. So just make sure this also says 3D mock app, exactly the same way that you spelled it. And we're going to install all the packages. So hit enter. Okay, so now that will essentially do its thing. Okay, we're going to select a framework. We're going to go with React. We're not going to have TypeScript, so let's just go with JavaScript, and there we go. Like I said, super basic. I really want to just get the bare bones of this working, and then you can, make a TypeScript project. You can then make a Next.js project. It really is up to you. Okay, so we have done it. So if you're using VS Code, you can just open it up like so. However, we are going to be using WebStorm for this. So I'm going to get up my code editor of choice. I'm going to open, and in WebStorm projects, I'm just going to open up my 3D mock app. So there we go. Great. Now let's get back to the docs. So first off, let's install Clerk React. So all I'm going to do this time, maybe let's work in our terminal here. So we are in 3D Mockup, and I'm going to install Clerk React. So as you hopefully know, this should update in my dependencies. For anyone watching this in the future, these are the versions that we are using here today. So here are my React versions, and here are all my dev dependencies. So if you're watching this in the future, you might have to change these, okay? Just replace the numbers and hit npm-i again to install these packages. Wonderful. So there we go. This is the version of Clerk React we are using today. Great. So we've done that. Now let's set our Clerk API key. So this is mine already. I will be removing it, so don't please take it. And I'm just going to create a .env file. So file.env in the root of my project, and just stick in my API key to Clerk. Now we're going to import it into our project. So let's go ahead and do it. I'm just going to actually copy this line, import your publishable key. Let's head over to our projects. In the source directory, go to main. Okay, so I'm just going to put that here like so. And then the next thing we do is add the Clerk provider to our app. So just like so, you can add this code to throw an error. So perhaps let's go ahead and do that. There we go. And then let's use the Clerk provider. So right over the app, we're going to wrap our app just like this. So here is our app. Here's my Clerk provider. Let's open it up and just wrap the app in it like so. Great. And of course, we need to import it. So once again, let's import from Clerk React, just like that. Okay, and that is really it. So maybe I'll just make this a little bit smaller. We're importing the Clerk provider. We're getting the publishable key from our .env file. We're throwing an error if there's something wrong. And then we are wrapping our app in the Clerk provider, which has the publishable key. So wonderful. Next step. So now we're going to create a header with Clerk components. So these are some basic components that we can get from Clerk. The sign in module component that you did see previously, a user button, a sign in button, and the sign out component too. So in fact, maybe let's copy all of this. So you can just choose to click here if you want. Let's go to our app, and I'm going to just delete everything in this file and just paste this in like so. Okay. Great. So we're importing these things from Clerk React, and then we're exporting that function. You can choose to just keep it like so, or you can use const. It is really up to you. Perhaps I'm just going to use const just because it's just a personal preference of mine. So now we need to export default app. Great. That is the full code. Let's move on. Now let's actually run it and create our first user. So once again, in my terminal, make sure I am in a 3D Mockup app. I'm going to run the command np run dev. And now let's open up our project on this URL right here on localhost 5173. And there we go. We have a sign in button. So this is when we're signed out. As you can see here, when we are signed out, we show the sign in button. So let's go ahead and create our first user, sign in. And amazing. So this is our sign in component. I'm going to choose to continue with Google. Okay, so let's just go ahead and do that. And amazing. We are now signed in because I could see my user button. So signed in, we see the user button. It really is that easy. Okay, and if you go back to your dashboard and go to users, you will now see I am there. I am a user, and you can click on me and, you know, get all of my information that I have used to sign up. At the moment, I'm not part of any organizations, but we will continue with that later. Great. So let's carry on. So that's really it. We can add more components such as the organization viewer, but we will do that when the time comes. At the moment, we are signed in, and if you click on here, we even have this cool little drop down. Now you can even change the theme and customize this really quite a lot. I'm going to just change the theme, however. So if we go back here, let's go back to main.jsx. I'm just going to get rid of this terminal for now so we have more space. And in the Clerk provider, okay, so we're already passing through the publishable key as well as the sign out URL. We also can put through appearance, and then I'm going to pass through the base theme, and I'm just going to make it dark. The default is the one that you just saw, which is light. They also have a purple one as well. Okay, so there really is quite a few. And another thing we can do is add variables. So for example, if I want the primary color primary to be blue, for example, I can do that. Just be aware that you have to look through the documentation to see which colors you can actually use. So great, we've done that. We also need to import the dark theme. So import dark from another package. This is Clerk themes. So of course, we're going to have to install it. So once again, let's get up our terminal. I'm just going to make a new tab and do npm I Clerk themes, making sure I am in the 3D Mockup app. Great. So this is looking really good. There we go. We've passed through that into our Clerk provider. And now if we go back here, it is indeed dark mode. Wonderful. So we can manage my account and it looks like this, just really like we saw in here. We are now viewing that in our app. I've changed this to blue, however, I don't really want it. I just wanted to kind of show you that. So let's get rid of that and keep it as it is. So wonderful. So of course we can sign out. However, I think let's first start this up a little bit before fleshing this out further. So I'm just going to go back here. Let's go back to our app and let's reorganize this a little bit. So with a sign out page, instead of just having a sign in button, I'm actually just going to show an actual sign in page. So sign in page. So that is a component that we are going to make. That's actually going to include our sign in button. So let's go ahead in the source directory, make a new directory. I'm going to call it components, just like so. And in here, I'm going to create a new file. I'm just going to call it in page.jsx. So const, let's make this bigger so you can read it, sign in page. We're not going to have any props. And then we're going to return, for now, just do that and do export default sign in page. Great. So we have one component done. In fact, let's go ahead and create a bunch of components while we are here. We're going to have the sign in page. We're going to also have a dashboard. So let's add dashboard.jsx. Let's also create a new file. We're going to have a header.jsx. Let's also create another new file. We're going to have user details.jsx. So I believe that's all the components that we're going to have. And now I'm just going to, well, maybe let's use the sign in page. I'm just going to copy that and paste it. However, just switch this out to be dashboard. Let's copy that. Do the same for header. So there we go. Header. I'm not using any shortcuts just because I think they can be quite confusing in tutorials. So hopefully you're following along. And then let's do user details. Great. So we've created some components. Let's go back to here and let's import them. So of course, we're not importing the sign in button here anymore. Let's go ahead and import sign in page from components. I'm also going to import the header. So import header from components and import dashboard from components. Great. So sign in page is going to go here, and when we are signed in, again, I'm not going to display just the user button. I'm actually going to display a header and a dashboard. Great. So as we are currently signed in, we'll see a header and a dashboard. If I actually just put the text of header here, and maybe just the text of dashboard here, you will actually see that. So header and dashboard are showing up. Just going to inspect this so we can get up our console and really see what's going on and see any error messages too. Cool, so we've got our header, we've got our dashboard. Let's continue. Maybe let's work on the header first. Okay, so the header is going to be really simple. Let's make it semantically correct. So we're going to use the header element. And in here, we're actually going to import the organization switcher. So I'm going to import, yes, the user button, okay, but also the organization switcher, this one from Clerk at Clerk React. Okay, so I've just imported those two things, and in my header, I'm going to use the organization switcher, just like so, and the user button. Again, we can customize these if we want. So for example, I can use appearance again and then pass through elements. Let's pass through the organization preview avatar. So preview avatar box, and just set its size 6. Okay, great. And let's also do the same maybe for the button. So once again, let's use appearance, elements, and this time I'm going to pass through the user button avatar box and just set the size to be the same. Great. So that is all the code that we're going to have in the header. So it really isn't a lot, but it's going to look great. And there we go. So there we go. This is the organization switcher. So I can switch from my personal account or create an organization, or this is just my user button that we saw previously. Wonderful. Maybe let's style this up a little bit. So this time, I'm just going to put everything in one file. So let's get rid of the contents of the app CSS file. And I'm just going to say that everything's going to have the font color of a kind of off-white, so 240, 240, 240. And then also font family is going to be, let's do Verdana and a sans serif as a backup. Okay, I'm also just going to grab the HTML and actually the root and make the background color. Let's go with a kind of off black that I have pre-chosen, and just make sure that the width is 100 of the viewport width. Great. Let's also grab the body and let's just give it the same background color. And also I'm going to use display flex to initialize flexbox. I'm going to set the height of the whole body to 100 viewport height and flex direction column, making sure that everything is kind of stacked on top of each other. So there we go, that's our header, and our dashboard is underneath it. So that's what it looks like at the moment. Let's also grab our header. So there we go, and once again, initialize flexbox. This time I'm going to use justify content space between to space out the organizer and the user button. I'm going to give it a padding of 15 pixels and 20 pixels on the left and right, so top and bottom, left and right, and also just going to set the background color just to essentially be the same because we're going to make it sticky. So let's do position sticky and make it stick to the top with a Z index of 1, making sure that it's kind of always on top. One other thing I'm going to do is just add a border bottom, a very thin one, so 1 pixel solid, and I'm going to go with RGB, a light gray, like so. Great. One thing we're also going to have to import is this style, so import the app CSS file right in here to see those changes. And wonderful. Okay, so I'm gonna just make this an empty div because we already used the header and we don't need it here anymore. And now this is looking like so. So already much better. Let's work on the dashboard next. So let's just minimize some of these. I'm just gonna shut all these down. And let's select the dashboard. Now the dashboard, well, it's gonna have the user details. So I'm going to import the user details from user details as we are in the same location. And instead of just saying the word dashboard, in fact, I am going to use a div here. So just like that, I'm going to give this the class name of user container so we can style it up. And in here is where I'm going to put my user details. Okay, so just like that. One other thing I'm going to import is the model mug. We haven't actually put that in here yet. I'm not going to put it in components. Okay, I'm going to put it on the same level as the app. So right here, I'm going to create a new file. I'm just going to call this modelmug.jsx. And once again, const modelmug return. Let's put a div for now and just put model mug and do export default model mug. Okay, so that is just for now. And in our dashboard, we're going to get it. So we need to go out of here and get the model mug. And let's go ahead and just put the model mug in like so. Great. So the user container is going to call the user details and the model mug. The model mug itself is going to have a class name of container. And if we look here, there we go, our model mug is showing up. So great, we'll go back to this later. For now, let's work on the user details, and we are now done with our dashboard. So let's go to our user details right here and build it out. So our user details, well, I'm just going to essentially show, like my name and everything like that. So let's import use organization, use session, and use user. So we can get all the details that I just mentioned. So in order to do that, we're going to do const get the user from use user. Let's also get the session from use session. And also let's get the organization, whole of it from use organization. If, however, there is no user or no session, I'm just going to return null. Okay, so that's if we didn't get this back or this back. Otherwise, we're going to return a div. Let's give this the class name of info container, as it's going to store some information. And in here, well, I'm going to make 3 articles. So one article. Let's give this the class name of info detail. And I'm going to have 3 of these. So 1, 2, 3. And now let's flesh them out. So in the first article, this is essentially going to deal with my, user details like my avatar. So let's put in an image here. And I'm going to give this the class name of user detail image. Is going to hold my image. So now I can get that from the user object, and I'll just get the image URL. So that should show my avatar, and it does. Of course, we will style it up. Don't worry about that. Great. And I'm also just going to make an h1 element like so. That's going to get my first name again from the user object, and I'm going to put a space there. my second name, so user last name. Cool. So once again, this is what it will look like at the moment. Maybe let's style it up before we go further. So once again, let's go to the app CSS file. I'm just going to zoom in for you, and let's grab some things so we can style them. So maybe let's grab all H1 headers. I'm just going to set the font size of this to be 25 pixels. H2, we're going to go with 20, so font size 20 pixels. For both of those, so H1 and H2, I'm going to text align center. And then we're going to use actually tables as well. So in the table data, I'm going to pick the font size of 12 pixels. Now let's actually grab the info detail, okay? So the three info details that we're going to have, let's just give them a background color. So I'm going to go with this kind of light gray, so 31, 31, 35. I've picked this out already. I'm going to give it a padding of 20 pixels, a margin of 20 pixels. Maybe let's increase that. Let's spell this correctly. Let's round it off using border radius 20 pixels. Let's give it a border. I'm going to go with 1 pixel solid. Maybe let's do 60, 60, 60. So a little bit lighter again. Great, and I'm just going to hard code the width as well. So that's the info detail. Let's also get the image, so user detail image, and I'm going to set a height to 200 pixels, a width to be 200 pixels, border radius to be 50 pixels, margin auto to space it out from left to right, and for that I need display block as well. And we also have the user container, remember, that holds our user detail and the mug. And for this, I'm just going to use display flex so we can separate them from left to right equally using space between. So already you will see this is looking so much better. The user detail image, that's why it wasn't picked up. Okay, so this is looking quite cool. I like it. Now, I will also be using tables to display the data, so we might as well just add that here. Let's grab the table itself. I'm going to do border spacing on it and make it be 5 pixels. And then also I'm going to be width 100%, so it takes up the whole container. And then each table data element, I'm going to give it a background color. Again, I'm going even lighter, 49, 49, 50. Padding, I'm going to do 6 pixels, top and bottom, 10 pixels, left and right. And border radius, let's go with 10. Great. So now let's actually make some tables. So once again, in our first article, I'm going to create a table just like so, and let's add some TD elements. This one is going to say email, just like so. And then the second one is, you guessed it, going to contain the email. From what though? Well, it's going to be from the user object. So email addresses, I'm just going to pick the first one and get the email address, because you can have more than one email address associated with a user. Cool. Let's also put these in a table row. So I'm just going to grab that and put it like so. So now I'm just going to maybe copy this. Let's just delete that so we can use it. So we're just going to create table rows. We're going to have a last sign in, created at, and then a user ID. Okay, so let's do it. Like I said, this will be last sign in, created at, and user ID. You don't have to have all of these for your own projects. I'm just kind of showing you as much as I can from what this app returns. So user last sign in at, and user created at, and then of course the user ID. Great. We are going to have to format the date of this and format the date of that. So we'll just leave this blank for now. Wonderful. Let's move on to our next article. So let's just go down here. Once again, let's open this up. This time, let's maybe give this an H2 heading, and I'm just going to put session details. So it's really sure what each of these is about. So session details, and once again, let's put in a table. Let's put in a table row, and let's put in 2 table data elements. So there we go. We're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 this time. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Our first one is going to be the session ID. The next one is going to be the status. Then we have last active and expired at. Okay, so these are going to come from the session object. So session ID, session, you got it, status, and then last active, we're going to have to format this again. So session last active at, and session expire at. Once again, let's just do that. And there we go. We have our third article, and now let's do the fourth one. However, this is conditional. This should only show up if an organization is there. It's not at the moment, so I'm just going to leave that off. And let's do it. So H2, once again, organization. Let's make it capital so it's the same. And once again, table, you should know this by heart now. Table row, table D, and then let's just copy that. And this one, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's go ahead and do it. So I'm going to put org ID. And then this time we go into the organization object and get the ID. This one we get the org name. So let's go ahead and go into the object and get the name. This one will have member count, organization, members count, and finally we have pending invites or invite list. Let's go organization pending invitations count. So great. Of course, we only want to see if this is true. So organization, if that is true, then we show all of that article. So just wrap the whole article in that. Organization true, we show the article element. Great. So at the moment, we don't have an organization, so we can't see it. However, if I create an organization, let's go with code with Anya, we can upload an image too. Let's just put a React logo, click create. And we can also invite members. So maybe let's invite some of my other emails, anya@freecodecamp.org, and send invitations. Okay, you can select their role too, and finish. So great. So now that organization shows up because we are signed in as an organization. However, if I click on my personal account, it doesn't anymore. Pretty cool, right? Let's just format these dates and then we are really ready to go. We'll just do the sign-in page and then the 3D mug. So let's do it. So first off, we're going to have to write some functions to format the date first. So maybe it's better if I just paste it in here. So here is one function. Of course, you can use the const, just like so. So here we are formatting the date. Let's also format date with numbers. Again, I'm just going to change this to be a const, just like that. And now let's use both. So the user last sign in, we're going to wrap that in format date. Okay, and just pass that through. The user created at is also going to be put through format date, just like that. And then these last two are going to be passed through format date with numbers. So I'll show you what both of these look like. Format date with numbers, and pass that through. And once again, format date with numbers, and pass that through. So now you'll see, there we go, format date and format date with numbers. Okay, so we've got a time there too. Wonderful, it's just much more precise. We're also getting some errors here, so maybe let's add a table body around the table so we don't get that error message. And that should solve our problem. So table body, and then last one here, table body. Much better. Okay, so amazing, we've done it. So once again, maybe let's show you the organization. This is the organization, and we can manage it directly from here. So here we go, we can update profile, we can look at the members. So one member here and one invitation. You can also invite members, you can revoke invitations, and I'm guessing you can remove members too. But you can't for me because I'm an admin. Hee hee. So that is pretty cool. I'm really happy with that. You will see member count here and pending invite. That is correct. Let's go back to my personal account. So now I'm just going to sign out so we can see the sign in page, because that's what we're working on next. So let's shut down our user detail, and back here, well, on signed out, we should see the sign in page. So let's work on that. My sign-in page, well, like we said, we're going to have the sign-in button. So import sign-in button from Clerk. And I'm also going to import a logo that we already made. So mock logo from, and I'm just going to put it in assets. So I'm just going to literally drag it over like so, refactor. And in assets, you should see the mock PNG. So we can go into assets now and get it. So here, all we're going to do is return a div, just like so. And then I'm also going to give it the class name of sign in. We'll have the image for the logo. So as the source, we're going to pass through the mock logo. Alt is going to be mock logo, that is correct. And let's also give it a class name of logo. Okay, just so we can style it up. So that is our image, and then we'll just show the sign in button, just like so. So super simple. So now let's style this up a little bit. So .logo, just going to make sure that the width is 600 pixels at all times. And that is essentially what it looks like now. Let's also grab the sign in class, as that's what wraps both of those components. So sign in. I'm going to initialize flexbox. I'm going to set a height to be 100 of viewport height. Let's also do a flex direction of column. Let's justify everything from the center and align items center to. Okay, so that way it will be literally centered from left to right and top to bottom too. And great. So I really like how this is looking. This is my sign-in page. So we are nearly done. Let's sign in once more. Okay, let's sign into our app. Continue with Google. And amazing. This is looking so, so good. Now I am really zoomed in, so I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. Okay. Let's work on the model bug next. So for this, we're going to be working with a canvas. So I'm actually going to grab the canvas and just give it a position of absolute. It is, of course, in the container So I'm going to give the container a width of 100% and a position of relative. So the canvas is fixed to it. Okay, cool. So let's get rid of that and let's get rid of the app.jsx and bring up our model.jsx file. Okay, so let's get rid of that text and let's do it. So for this, I really have to give credit to this code pen. Okay, it really kind of helped me figure this out. And of course, I have used the visuals from here too. So full credit to this code pen. I really appreciate you helping me out with this for this tutorial. So what we're going to do is import, use callback, use effect, use ref, and not use state actually. So that is enough. And then we're going to import everything as 3 from the package 3, which is of course Three.js. So let's install an npm i3. We're also going to import something called orbit controls. So we can control how the cup is viewed, like spinning and stuff. So, and for that, we need to go to 3 examples, JSM controls, orbit controls. So we're getting that from there. And then we're also going to import GLT loader from 3, once again, examples, JSM loaders. There we go. Now, we're also going to import the actual model, import mug from assets model1.glb, and you can get this from the code pen too, or from my code. So in assets, I'm just going to drag it over. Okay, so this is a GLB file. You won't be able to view it, but just whack it in there, just like I have in assets, like so. Cool. Okay, so now let's actually work on the model mug component that will render a 3D mug with customizable textures and colors. So first off, we're going to put in the refs for DOM elements. We're going to need a container ref, an image selector, because we're going to be changing the image, and a color selector too. So just make sure to put those in. Then I'm just going to put in the notes for you. We're going to put in the refs for Three.js objects. Okay, so we have the scene reference, the camera reference, the render reference, the orbit control, the mesh reference, the decal geometry reference, and the material reference. So maybe let's just add some annotation here too. Just going to get rid of that for now. Now we're going to initialize the Three.js scene. So const init scene equals, I'm going to use callback and just pass through if no container ref current exists, however, then we just return out of this because it's important for that to exist. So maybe let's go ahead and add that first div and then just give it a ref of container reference. So that is essentially where the mug is going to go. Okay, let's also create another div and I'm going to give this the class name of preview. And actually this is going to go in here. And it's going to hold that mug, but also going to hold some controls. So maybe let's make this div with the class name of controls. Then we're going to have one div. Let's give this the class name of control option. And in here, I'm just going to have a p element that says step 1. And then we're going to have an input just like that, and the type of this is going to be file. So we want to essentially upload files, but not just any files. We're going to accept only images. So accept image like that. Maybe just put this on another line so it's more readable. I'm going to give this the ID of image selector. Let's give it the name of same, so image selector, and then we're also going to give it a ref, this time of image selector ref, which we defined previously. We're also going to have another div control option. So whenever that closes, let's make another one. Let's open it up. Once again, we'll have P2, this time some text though. So I'm going to put pick your color, and then another input. So input just like that. Once again, this time the type is going to be to pick the color. So type color, ID, color, picker, name, color picker, and I'm going to give it a default value of white actually, so 1, 2, 3. Let's maybe just be more precise to be. Let's maybe just pass through 6 to be sure. And the ref is going to be the color selector reference. Okay, and one last one. So whenever this one finishes, which is here, we're going to have another div with the class name control option. We're going to have 3, and this is going to be get the design. And then we're going to put a button that's just going to say download. Okay, and on click of this button, we're going to download the actual design. However, maybe let's just define that here for now. So const download at the moment really doesn't do anything. Okay, so let's just do console log download. Great. So this is all looking great. Let's go back to writing the initial Three.js scene. So first off, we're going to create the scene. So here we are creating the scene and attaching it to scene ref current. Now we're going to create the camera. So in order to create the camera, we're going to use 3 perspective camera and assign it to the const camera, passing through these values. After we have defined the camera, we assign it to the camera ref current and then pass it through and add it to the scene. Next, we're still in the function, we're going to add lighting. So once again, using 3 hemisphere light. So this is just the color white. And after we defined hemispheric, we're passing it through and adding it to the scene. And now we're going to set up the renderer. So once again, we're going to use WebGL renderers, pass through alpha true, anti-alias and logarithm depth buffer, assign it to the const renderer. And then we are also setting the background color here, the pixel ratio, the size of the actual window itself, which is 800 by 800 pixels. And then the renderer, we are assigning to the renderer ref current. Now we're going to actually add the canvas to the DOM. So this is how you would do it. So remember the container ref, which is the div we picked out at the bottom. And finally, we're going to set up the orbit controls, which will allow us to kind of rotate the mug. So const orbit controls. And finally, we're going to return all of that. And there we go. Now let's actually load the 3D model. So const load model, use callback. So we're writing a callback function. It's an empty array. Let's check if these things do not exist, because if they don't, we just return out of this. Else, once again, we're going to get a scene from the current scene, the camera from the camera ref, and the orbit controls from the orbit control ref current. Great. Let's now get the loader and define the camera position. And now we're going to get the loader and load the mug. So GLTF, we're going to get that model, that GLB file, essentially. We're going to set up an environment. We're then going to center the model based on bounding box. We will then configure the orbit controls, then position the camera and model, and then process the model meshes, okay? So all of this function right here is to process the model meshes. Then we're going to add the object to the scene. Now let's just catch any errors. I know that was a lot. This isn't a Three.js tutorial. Kind of assumes some knowledge of it. However, I will be providing all the code for you so you can have a go at this once you get it working, of course. And then of course we console log an error if we have one too. Great. Now let's define the setup color selector, setup texture selector, and convert images to textures. So down here, I'm going to handle texture selection. So let's define it, const setup texture selector. Let's use callback and then pass through that function. So let's just delete all of this and then pass through an empty array. Once again, if the image selector doesn't exist or the material reference current doesn't exist, we go out of this. Then we define the function candle texture change, in which we pass through an event. And if material ref current exists, we then essentially get the image that we uploaded. So here we are getting it from target files. We create a object URL from it using this and pass it through the convert text to image function, which will then be assigned to material ref current map. So that is how you add a picture to the mug. And we want this to happen every time that we essentially change the input of the image selector ref. Let's also store cleanup function for later. So there we go. And great, so that is it. Now we're going to do the same just for the color selection. So let's paste that like so. Once again, const setup color selector, use callback, pass through material. Now, if there's no color selector, just return out of this. Let's handle the color change. So every time that event value changes, we set the material color. And once again, let's add an event listener to listen out for changes of the input and handle the color change. And once again, let's store a cleanup for later. Great. Now let's write a function to convert image URLs to Three.js textures. So once again, this is using a callback in order to get the image we upload and change it to a Three.js texture to put on our mug. We are nearly done, I promise. We're just going to write the animation loop that essentially spins the mug. So const animate, use callback. Once again, an empty array. Let's return out if this doesn't exist, or this doesn't exist, or this doesn't exist, or this doesn't exist. Once again, let's get the current refs and assign them to constants. Let's request animation frame. Let's then update the orbit controls. So again, that is the whole animation loop function. And then return the animation ID for cleanup. So that's the whole function right there. Now we're going to initialize everything. So for this, we're going to use effect. Let's make this empty. So in its scene, load model, animate it so it rotates, and then let's write a cleanup function. So return, we're going to cancel the animation frame. So just do so like that. Then we're going to remove the renderer from DOM. Then we're going to remove Three.js resources. And we're going to trigger this if any of these change. Great. Okay, so we are going to need to do some configuration so we can work with glub files. So let's go here, let's go to vite-config. Just make this a little bit bigger, and I'm just going to put assets include and that glib file like so. And there we go. So we have our mug. Let's choose a file. Just going to choose this right here. And amazing, here I am on a mug, and of course we can change the color, so just like so, and then we'll download it. So this is looking good. Let's just style up these controls, and we are nearly done. So once again, let's go back in here. Let's grab the controls. Let's do padding 30 pixels. So 30 pixels on the left and right. Margin 20 pixels all around. Border radius, let's go with 20. Border solid 1 pixel, that's right, let's go with that. Let's choose the background color. I'm going to go with RGB 31, 31, 35. Let's do display flex and justify content space between. Cool, so we've done the controls. Now let's get each control option. And I'm just going to use flexbox to line item center from top to bottom. Let's also just assign each a width, and I'm going to actually cut off the overflow on the y-axis, so let's make it hidden. Cool. And one last thing, let's just grab every P element in there and just give it a padding right of 10 pixels. And I think that is it. Wonderful. This is looking so, so good. Maybe let's make this width a little bit more generous. I love it. So how cool do I look on a mug? Let's work on the download button next. Now, the download button is actually a lot more involved than you would think, purely because if you did it the simple way, the render wouldn't update and you would just download an empty image. So what you actually need to do is force a render pass to ensure the scene is up to date. So once again, just stick with me. Like, Three.js isn't the easiest. Maybe let's write it here. So continue with that. So once again, let's just check for if these exist, because if they don't, we return out of this. Let's get the current rendered scene and camera and just assign new const. Let's ensure the orbit controls are updated. Now let's force a render pass to ensure the scene is up to date. Then we're going to have to create a completely new canvas for capturing the image. So that's how you would do it. And then we'll draw the WebGL canvas to our captured canvas. We will then convert the canvas to a data URL, okay, so PNG format with transparency. There we go. The transparency is nothing really. And create a temporary anchor element to trigger the download. Finally, we will append to body, click to download, then remove. Okay, so this just means that now, let's just start again. Oops, just make sure that says on click like so. Once again, I'm just going to upload that image of me. Let's change the color. Ooh, maybe let's make it like a fun pink. So here I am on a mug, and now I can download it. And there we go. Okay, of course, I can rotate it however I wish, and that is the image that will be downloaded. Ta-da! How cool is that? When tidying this up, I would also delete everything from the index.css file, apart from the button, to be honest. So maybe we can take the button and the media asset and just stick it in here, okay, just because it was previously made. Of course, you can really go to town with changing everything. However, I'm not going to do this. I will leave this up to you. Okay, I'm just changing everything to pixels just so that it's a little bit more consistent. Okay, great. Okay, so thanks so much for coding along with me. I will make this code available to everyone. Of course, that model mug component is very difficult for those who have not worked with Three.js before. So yeah, please take it and of course make it your own. I'd love to see what you built.